May 2nd, 2001, 11:47 a.m. The smell hits them before they see anything. Metallic. Heavy. Wrong. Leslie Jennings' husband stands in the hallway of his own home, staring at the red smears along the cream-coloured walls. His hand trembles against the doorframe. Behind him, Leslie's boss grips his cell phone, already dialing 911. Neither man speaks. They don't need to. The bloody footprints lead up the stairs. The dog is barking from somewhere below them, frantic, desperate, scratching against the basement door. The animal has been locked down there for hours, maybe longer. The house should be empty. Leslie should be at work. She's always at work by 10 a.m. She's never late. Never. Carl Jennings takes the first step up the stairs. His voice cracks when he calls her name. No answer. The 911 operator's voice crackles through the speakerphone. Sir, do not go upstairs. Officers are 3 minutes out. Do not contaminate the scene. But Carl is already moving. His foot lands in something wet. More blood, fresh enough to smear under his shoe. The bathroom door at the top of the stairs stands half open. He sees her feet first. Leslie lies face down in the shower stall, her body crumpled in a position no living person could hold. Her hair is matted with dried blood. The tile around her is stained rust brown. And even though he knows, even though every instinct in his body is screaming, Carl drops to his knees and reaches for her wrist, checking for a pulse he knows isn't there. This is the moment Chevy Chase, Maryland, one of the safest communities in America, realizes have a murdering in their beloved town. And that monster, he's been hiding in plain sight for 6 years. If you're fascinated by cold cases that took decades to solve, hit that subscribe button now. This isn't just another missing person story. It's a journey into how a single ignored tip, one DNA sample that was never taken, and 23 years of silence protected a killer who should have been caught in 2002. What you're about to hear wasn't in the news coverage. It wasn't in the initial police reports. Some of it has never been made public until now. Where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments below. Chevy Chase, Maryland sits just outside Washington, D.C., a place where cherry blossoms bloom every spring and joggers pass each other with polite waves. It's the kind of suburb where people move to escape the city, where parents feel safe letting their kids ride bikes to the park, where neighbors know each other's names. In 2001, Chevy Chase has one of the lowest crime rates in the entire country. Murders here don't just make headlines, they shatter the community's entire identity. The streets are lined with colonial homes, each one set back from the road with carefully maintained lawns. People leave their doors unlocked, they trust their neighbors, they wave at each other from windows. That trust is about to be weaponized against them. On the morning of May the 2nd, 2001, it's a normal Wednesday. The weather is mild, pushing toward spring warmth. Commuters head toward the metro stations. School buses make their rounds. Everything is ordinary, predictable, safe. In a modest 2-story home on a tree-lined street, Leslie Jennings is getting ready for work. She's running slightly behind schedule, not unusual for her. Her husband Carl left 30 minutes earlier, around 7:30 a.m. A neighbor saw him back out of the driveway, even caught him waving at someone through the front window. That someone was Leslie. She's alone in the house now. The dog, a loyal companion who usually shadows her through every room, is somewhere nearby. The front door is unlocked. It's Chevy Chase. Why wouldn't it be? Within the next 2 hours, everything will change. Kindly comment your location in the comments section. I'll be glad to know where you're watching from. And if you've ever stepped foot in Chevy Chase, Maryland, or if you're there right now, I need you to comment, I know this place. Leslie Jennings was born October 5th, 1952 in Rhode Island, the middle child in a family of 8. Her childhood was nomadic. Her father served in the army, and the family moved every few years, packing up their lives and starting over in new towns, new schools, new bases. When Leslie was 12, they landed in Pensacola, Florida, and for the first time she got to stay put long enough to finish high school in one place. She was good with words, the kind of kid who devoured books and filled notebooks with stories. Journalism felt like a natural fit. At the University of Florida, Leslie found both her calling and her person. Carl was quiet where she was outgoing, steady where she was spontaneous. They balanced each other. In 1974, when Leslie was 22, they got married. 3 years later, their daughter Lauren arrived, and Leslie's world shifted into sharp focus. Everything she did, every choice she made, centered around building a stable, loving home for that little girl. By the time they moved to Chevy Chase in the early 90s, Leslie had carved out a comfortable life. She worked at an advertising agency in DC, a job that let her flex her creative muscles while staying close to home. Her co-workers knew her as reliable, meticulous, the person who remembered everyone's birthday and kept a stash of emergency granola bars in her desk drawer for anyone who skipped breakfast. But it was the small things that defined Leslie. She collected snow globes from every state she'd visited, 47 by May 2001. Each one sat on a shelf in the living room, a miniature monument to family road trips and weekend getaways. She wasn't perfect. She ran late more often than not, always trying to squeeze one more task into her morning routine. She had a weakness for detective novels and true crime shows. Ironic, in the worst possible way. She worried about Lauren constantly, even though her daughter was 24 and thriving at university. On the morning of May 2nd, 2001, Leslie is 48 years old. She's supposed to catch the bus into DC at 8:30 a.m. for her 10 o'clock shift. It's the same routine she's followed for years. grab coffee, kiss Carl goodbye, lock up the house, walk 3 blocks to the bus stop. She never makes it to that bus stop. And the person who stops her? He's someone she's known for years, someone she trusted, someone her daughter loved. She has no idea that opening her front door this morning will be the last decision she ever makes. 10:30 a.m. Leslie's boss stares at his watch for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. She's never late. Not without calling. Not without sending one of those apologetic emails she types in all caps when she's rushed. So sorry, running behind. Nothing today. Her desk sits empty. Her coffee mug exactly where she left it yesterday, still holding the dried residue of her last cup of tea. He picks up the phone and dials the emergency contact number. Lauren Jennings, daughter. Lauren is in a lecture hall at university when her phone vibrates. She doesn't recognize the number, almost sends it to voicemail, but something makes her answer. Maybe it's instinct. Maybe it's the same unease that's been sitting in her stomach since she woke up this morning. This is Lauren. Hi Lauren, this is David Chen from your mother's office. I'm sorry to bother you, but Leslie didn't come in today and she hasn't called. We can't reach her. The lecture hall suddenly feels too loud, too crowded. Lauren presses the phone tighter against her ear. What do you mean you can't reach her? Did you call the house? We tried. No answer. Lauren's mind races through possibilities. Doctor's appointment she forgot to mention. Car trouble. But her mom doesn't drive to work. She takes the bus. And she would have called. She always calls. Let me try my dad. Carl Jennings is in a meeting when his cell phone rings. He sees Lauren's name and his first thought is tuition. Some administrative issue that needs his signature. He excuses himself and steps into the hallway. Lauren, everything okay? Dad, where's Mom? The question makes no sense. What do you mean? She's at work. No, she never showed up. Her boss just called me. The hallway tilts. Carl grips the wall. That's impossible. I saw her this morning. She was getting dressed when I left for work. Dad, they can't reach her. Something's wrong. Carl is already moving toward the exit, keys in hand. His mind offering up benign explanations that his gut doesn't believe. Maybe she felt sick. Maybe she went back to bed. Maybe. But the maybe dies when he tries calling home and gets no answer. The drive from his office to Chevy Chase takes 18 minutes. He makes it in 12, running 2 red. Lights and not caring. Leslie's boss pulls up at the same time, parking on the street. Neither man speaks as they walk up to the front door. It's unlocked. Carl pushes it open slowly. Leslie? Silence. Then they see it. The blood on the hallway walls. Smeared handprints at shoulder height, like someone tried to catch themselves while falling. Red footprints tracking across the hardwood floor. Some clear enough to show tread patterns. Others smudged beyond recognition. The house smells wrong. Copper and cleaning chemicals. A nauseating combination that shouldn't exist together. Jesus Christ, Leslie's boss whispers. His hands shake as he pulls out his phone and dials 911. Carl moves deeper into the house, calling Leslie's name even though he knows. The basement door is closed and behind it the dog is going insane, barking and scratching and whimpering. Carl opens it and the animal bolts up the stairs, frantic, circling Carl's legs. Sir, this is 911. What's your emergency? There's blood everywhere. My wife, I can't find my wife. The operator's voice is calm, professional, designed to cut through panic. Sir, I need you to tell me exactly what you see. Are you inside the residence? Yes, the walls. There's blood on the walls. Is anyone else in the house with you? I don't know. I need you to exit the house immediately. Officers are being dispatched to your location. Do not touch anything. Do not go upstairs. But Carl is already at the base of the staircase, looking up at the bloody footprints that lead to the second floor. The first responding officers arrive within 4 minutes. They move through the house with weapons drawn, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. When they reach the upstairs bathroom, they freeze. Officer Rodriguez has been on the force for 11 years. He's seen car accidents, domestic violence scenes, overdoses. But this, Leslie Jennings lies face down in the shower stall, her body positioned in a way that tells a story. She wasn't killed here. The blood spatter is wrong. The pooling patterns don't match. Someone moved her after she died, dragged her up the stairs and arranged her in the shower like they were staging a scene. We need homicide, Rodriguez says into his radio, and crime scene techs, now. Within an hour, the house is swarming with investigators. They photograph the blood patterns, collect samples from every surface, dust for fingerprints. The evidence tells a horrifying timeline. Leslie was attacked in the downstairs hallway. The blood spatter on the baseboard, the defensive wounds on her hands, the way the footprints overlap and smudge, it all points to a struggle that lasted minutes. She fought, hard. After she died, the killer dragged her body upstairs to the bathroom. The blood trail shows this clearly. 2 parallel lines where her feet dragged across the floor, then up each step, each drag mark lighter than the last as her blood stopped flowing. But then, it gets stranger. The killer stayed in the house for at least an hour, maybe longer. Crime scene techs find traces of cleaning chemicals in the kitchen sink, the downstairs bathroom, on the hallway floor. Someone tried to wash away the blood, scrubbing at walls and floors and door frames. There's blood residue in the kitchen trash can, suggesting the killer disposed of bloodied rags or clothing. They even find evidence that someone attempted to clean under Leslie's fingernails. This wasn't a panic response, the lead detective says. This was calculated. They brought cleaning supplies with them. Because here's what makes investigators' blood run cold. None of those cleaning products are found in the house. Not the bottle, not the rags, nothing. The killer brought them, used them, and took them when they left. This wasn't a crime of passion, this was planned. But if it was planned, why is there so much blood? Why did the killer fail so spectacularly at the cleanup? And why risk staying in the house for so long? The medical examiner arrives and conducts a preliminary examination. 7 blunt force wounds to Leslie's head, all consistent with being slammed against a hard, angular surface. The baseboard in the hallway, investigators determine, the killer held her down and bashed her head against the floor repeatedly. There are also ligature marks on her neck, strangulation, and defensive wounds on her hands and forearms, skin under her fingernails. She fought for her life, and somewhere in this house, mixed with her blood, is the DNA of her killer. The local police department makes a decision that will haunt this case for 2 decades. They wait for the autopsy to officially classify this as a homicide. For 48 hours, the crime scene isn't processed with the urgency it deserves. Blood on the doorframe? Never swabbed. Potential evidence in the basement where the dog was locked? Barely examined. By the time the autopsy confirms murder, critical evidence has already been compromised. News spreads through Chevy Chase like a virus. Within hours, every parent in the neighborhood is calling their kids home early from school. Doors that haven't been locked in years suddenly have deadbolts installed. The community Facebook groups light up with speculation, fear, anger. Someone murdered Leslie Jennings in her own home in broad daylight in one of the safest towns in America, and the police have no idea who did it. But here's what nobody knows yet. The killer isn't some stranger who broke in through a window. The killer is someone Leslie knew, someone she opened the door for willingly, someone who walked these same streets, waved at these same neighbors, attended these same community events, someone who's about to disappear for 23 years. The DNA results come back on May 8th, 6 days after the murder. Foreign DNA, male, found in 3 separate locations, mixed with Leslie's blood on the hallway wall, under her fingernails, and on the shower stall floor. The sample is complete enough to run through CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, a database of genetic profiles from convicted offenders. No match. The lead detective stares at the report, a sick feeling settling in his stomach. No match means their killer has no prior record, at least nothing serious enough to require DNA collection. They're looking for a ghost. Carl Jennings becomes the immediate focus because he always does in cases like this. Statistically, when a woman is murdered in her home, it's almost always someone she knows, usually someone she lives with. Detectives bring Carl in for a formal interview. They're gentle but firm, walking him through his movements that morning step by step, looking for inconsistencies, gaps, anything that doesn't fit. You left the house at 7:30? Yes, maybe 7:35. I waved to Leslie through the window before I pulled out. And your neighbor saw you? Mrs. Patterson. She was getting her newspaper. We made eye contact. Mrs. Patterson confirms this. She saw Carl leave at approximately 7:30 a.m. She also saw someone at the window, a woman's silhouette waving back. Carl's co-workers confirm he arrived at the office by 8:15 a.m. and never left until he got the call about Leslie. The timeline doesn't work. Even if he'd killed Leslie before leaving for work, there's no way he could have stayed to attempt the cleanup. And his clothes showed no blood, no scratches, no signs of struggle. Detectives take his DNA anyway. It comes back negative against the sample found at the scene. They move on to co-workers, friends, the UPS driver who delivered to the Jennings home regularly, the contractor who'd done work on their bathroom the previous year. They collect DNA from 17 different men in Leslie's life. None of them match. This doesn't make sense, the lead detective says during a case review meeting. She didn't have enemies. There was no forced entry, no valuables taken. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a sexual assault. This wasn't domestic violence. So what the hell was it? One theory surfaces. A serial offender. Maybe Leslie wasn't the first. Maybe she won't be the last. Detectives start looking at unsolved cases in neighboring counties. There have been several burglaries in Chevy Chase over the past 6 months. Homes entered during the day. Small items taken. Nothing major. Could one of those burglaries have escalated into murder? The theory falls apart under scrutiny. Burglars don't bring cleaning supplies. Burglars don't stay at the scene for hours. Burglars don't commit murder and then calmly scrub blood off walls. Then the county forms a special task force to examine 6 unsolved murders across the DC metro area, looking for connections. Different age ranges, different methods, different geographical spread. By August, the task force concludes they're looking at 6 separate killers, not one. Lauren Jennings sits in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by detectives who speak in soft voices and ask painful questions. Did your mom mention anyone making her uncomfortable, following her, showing up unexpectedly? No, never. Was she involved in any conflicts, disputes with neighbors, work issues? No, everyone loved her. And that's the problem. Everyone did love Leslie. She had no enemies, no stalkers, no jilted lovers or angry ex-friends. She lived a quiet, drama-free life. She should have died of old age, surrounded by grandchildren, not beaten to death in her own hallway at 48. What about people who've been to your house? One detective asks. Friends of yours? Boyfriends? Lauren runs through the list mechanically. High school friends, college roommates. And then, almost as an afterthought, Eugene. My ex-boyfriend, but we broke up years ago. The detective writes down the name. Eugene who? Eugene Glee. He lived in the neighborhood. We dated in high school. When's the last time you saw him? Lauren has to think about it. 2 years ago, maybe. We ran into each other at a grocery store. It was fine. Normal. We said hi and moved on. The detective adds Eugene Glee to the list of people to interview, but it's a long list and Eugene isn't at the top. He dated Lauren as a teenager. They've been broken up for years. There's no apparent motive, no recent contact with the family. The name goes into the file and the investigation moves forward. Months pass. The case goes cold. September 2002, 16 months after Leslie's murder, an anonymous tip comes into the Chevy Chase Police Department. The caller's voice is muffled, nervous, like they're afraid of being overheard. You need to look at Eugene Glee. He dated Leslie Jennings. He knew that house. He was there all the time. The detective taking the call writes down the name, asks follow-up questions, but the caller hangs up. Eugene Glee. The name is already in the file, flagged during the initial investigation, but somehow nobody ever followed up. Nobody called him in for an interview. Nobody asked for his DNA. The tip should have changed everything. It doesn't. Years later, when reporters FOIA the case files, they'll find a notation. Eugene Glee, neighbour, ex-boyfriend of daughter. Tip received 9/14/02. Interview pending. The interview never happens. Why? Nobody can say for sure. Maybe it was understaffing. Maybe it was miscommunication. Maybe the detective assigned to follow up got pulled onto another case. Whatever the reason, Eugene Glee's name sits in that file, flagged but never pursued, while he goes on living his life. 2 months after that tip comes in, November 2002, Eugene and his mother move to Washington, D.C. They don't tell the neighbors they're leaving. They don't say goodbye. They just pack up and disappear. Eugene gets a job selling surveillance equipment. The irony isn't lost on anyone who'll learn about this later. A man who got away with murder selling cameras meant to catch criminals. He's good at his job, charming, professional. He donates to charities, volunteers in his community, becomes exactly the kind of person nobody would suspect of anything sinister. Leslie Jennings sees him occasionally over the years, once at a metro station, once at a restaurant in Georgetown. Each time they exchange awkward small talk, the way you do with an ex who's become a stranger. How have you been? Good. You? Good. Really good. After her mother's murder, Lauren mentions seeing Eugene and he does what people do. He offers condolences. I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. That's terrible. She hugs him, thanks him for his kindness, and they part ways. Neither of them knows he's lying, that he's standing there expressing sympathy for a murder he committed, that his DNA is sitting in an evidence locker waiting for technology to catch up with his crime. Carl Jennings never remarries. He throws himself into advocating for victims' families, pushing for better DNA technology, faster processing times, more resources for cold cases. But privately, he's dying inside. Every anniversary of Leslie's death, every birthday she doesn't celebrate, every grandchild she'll never meet, it hollows him out, piece by piece. In 2017, Carl Jennings dies of a heart attack. He's 68 years old. Lauren will say later that her father died of a broken heart, that the weight of not knowing who killed his wife, of wondering if justice would ever come, simply became too much to carry. Eugene Glee attends the funeral. He stands in the back, quiet and respectful. He shakes Lauren's hand. He tells her, "Your dad was a good man." She believes him. 5 years pass. Then 5 more. Then 5 more after that. Leslie's case file sits in a box marked Cold Cases, Unsolved Homicides. Every few years a new detective pulls it out, reviews the evidence, runs the DNA through CODIS again, hoping for a miracle match. Nothing. By 2020, it's been 19 years. Lauren has accepted that she may never know who killed her mother. The human brain can only sustain rage and grief for so long before it calcifies into something duller, something you learn to carry without feeling its full weight. But then, 2022 arrives. The Chevy Chase Police Department, facing public pressure over their abysmal cold case solve rate, assembles a special team. Fresh eyes, new technology, a mandate to finally close some of these old wounds. Leslie Jennings' case is at the top of the list. The new team reads through every file, every interview, every piece of evidence. They re-interview everyone still alive. They reach out to the public through social media, asking for tips, for memories, for anything that might have seemed insignificant at the time. They get nothing useful, just conspiracy theories and dead ends. That's when someone suggests genetic genealogy. It's a relatively new investigative technique, one that's been making headlines for solving decades-old cold cases. The Golden State Killer, the boy in the box. Cases that seemed impossible, cracked open by tracing DNA through family trees. The concept is straightforward but revolutionary. Take the killer's DNA and upload it to public genealogy databases, sites like GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, where millions of people have uploaded their genetic profiles hoping to find long-lost cousins or trace their ancestry. Almost always, you'll find a match. Not the killer themselves, but a relative, a third cousin, a distant uncle, someone who shares enough DNA to establish a family connection. From there, genealogists build out massive family trees, going back generations and then forward again, narrowing down potential suspects by age, location, proximity to the crime. It's painstaking work. It can take months, sometimes years, but it works. In July 2022, detectives send Leslie's case DNA to a company called Othram, specialist in genetic genealogy for criminal investigations. The clock starts ticking. What nobody knows yet, including Eugene Glee, who's living his quiet life in DC, selling surveillance equipment and volunteering at community events, is that his genetic signature is about to betray him. After 21 years of freedom, after decades of thinking he got away with it, after a lifetime of looking Lauren Jennings in the eye and lying to her face, his time is almost up. The genealogists at Othram start with the killer's DNA profile and upload it to GED Match, a public database where people voluntarily share their genetic information. Almost immediately they get a hit. A distant relative. The connection is weak, maybe a third or fourth cousin, but it's enough. It's a thread they can pull. The relative lives in Romania. He has no connection to Maryland, no apparent link to the Jennings family, but his DNA shares key markers with the killer, which means somewhere in their family trees there's a common ancestor. The genealogists get to work. They request the Romanian relative's family tree, whatever documentation he can provide. Birth certificates, marriage records, immigration papers. They build outward from that common ancestor, mapping every branch, every generation, every person who could potentially be the killer. It takes 2 years. 2 years of tracing lineages across continents, of dead ends and promising leads that fizzle out, of narrowing the pool of suspects from hundreds to dozens to a handful. By 2024, they've zeroed in on one family, the Glees. In 2001, at the time of Leslie's murder, the Glee family was living in Chevy Chase. They had a son, Eugene, who would have been 21 years old. The lead detective pulls up Eugene's name in the case file and feels her stomach drop. There's a notation from September 2002, an anonymous tip. His name flagged for follow-up. Interview pending. Tell me someone talked to this guy, she says. Her partner scans through the file. No interview, no DNA sample, nothing. The room goes silent. For 22 years, Eugene Glee's name has been sitting in this file, marked as a person of interest who was never actually investigated. A single missed follow-up, and a killer walked free for more than 2 decades. The detective starts pulling everything she can find on Eugene Glee. Arrest record, illegal weapons possession, theft, drunk driving, minor offences, nothing violent, nothing that would require mandatory DNA collection. That explains why he's not in CODIS. But there's something else in his history, something that makes the detective's blood run cold. When Eugene was 16, a woman reported being attacked by a teenager matching his description. She couldn't ID him definitively, but the details fit. White male, approximately 6 feet tall, athletic build, living in the neighborhood. Eugene denied it. His friends vouched for him. And Lauren Jennings, his girlfriend at the time, went to the police station with another friend to tell them Eugene was with them that night, that he couldn't possibly have done it, that he was completely harmless. The case was dropped. Now, sitting in a conference room with Leslie Jennings' unsolved murder file spread across the table, that earlier incident takes on new significance. What if Lauren and her friend were wrong? What if Eugene did attack that woman? What if he got away with it because people couldn't imagine him being violent because he was charming and well-liked and seemed so normal? The detective keeps digging. Eugene dated Lauren from age 15 to 20, 5 years. He spent those years at the Jennings home constantly, eating dinner there, doing homework there, sleeping over in the guest room. He knew that house better than most guests would. He knew the layout, the routines, the schedule. He knew Leslie left for work around 8:30 every morning. He knew she'd be home alone after Carl left. On May the 2nd, 2001, Eugene Glee was 21 years old. He was unemployed, still living with his mother just a 10-minute walk from the Jennings house. 2 months after Leslie's murder, he moved to DC and never got in trouble. Again, no more arrests, no more incidents. It's as if he simply decided to become a model citizen overnight, or as if he was running from something. By June 2024, detectives have enough circumstantial evidence to consider Eugene their prime suspect, but they need DNA. They need definitive proof. Eugene is scheduled to return from a business trip to Europe on June 9th, flying into Dulles International Airport. The detective makes a call to airport security. I need your help setting up a discard retrieval. We're looking to collect DNA from a subject returning from international travel. It's a common technique. Law enforcement can't force someone to give a DNA sample without probable cause, but if someone voluntarily discards an item, a coffee cup, a water bottle, a straw, that item becomes abandoned property. Fair game. The plan is simple and effective. June 9th, 2024. Eugene Glee walks through customs at Dulles International with his carry-on bag, tired from the long flight, thinking about getting home and sleeping off the jet lag. A border officer approaches him. "Sir, could you step over here for a moment? Just a routine check." Eugene complies. Why wouldn't he? He's done nothing wrong. He's a law-abiding citizen returning from a business trip. The officer gestures to a nearby table. This'll just take a minute. On the table, several bottles of water, set out like they're for border agents, casual and unassuming. Eugene waits while the officer checks his passport, flips through his documents. The officer asks a few questions, purpose of trip, where he stayed, standard stuff. Eugene answers easily, his mind already drifting to the metro ride home. He's thirsty. The flight was long, the airport is warm, and there's water right there. He picks up a bottle, unscrews the cap, drinks half of it while the officer finishes the document check. "All right, you're good to go. Welcome home." Eugene thanks him, sets the empty bottle down on the table and walks toward the exit. The moment he's out of sight, detectives move in. They collect the bottle carefully, seal it in an evidence bag, and send it directly to the forensics lab with a rush order. Process this immediately. Compare it against case file 2001-1847. The forensic technician extracts DNA from the bottle's rim where Eugene's mouth touched, where his hands gripped the plastic. She runs it through the comparison software, pulling up the DNA profile from Leslie Jennings' murder scene, the genetic material found under her fingernails, the foreign DNA mixed with her blood. The computer processes the data, analyzing, matching markers, running comparison protocols. Then, match confirmed, probability 99.9999%. Leslie Jennings scratched her killer during the attack. She fought hard enough to get his DNA under her nails, and that DNA belongs to Eugene Glee. 23 years after he murdered her, the evidence she left behind is about to destroy him. The forensics report lands on the lead. Detective's desk with the weight of 23 years behind it. DNA match confirmed. Eugene Glee. She reads the report 3 times, not because she doesn't understand it, but because she needs to absorb the magnitude. After 2 decades of dead ends, false leads, and crushing disappointment, they finally have him. But a DNA match isn't enough. They need to understand what happened that morning. They need to build a timeline, establish motive, prepare for the inevitable trial where defense attorneys will try to explain away the unexplainable. The detective spreads out the original crime scene photos, Eugene's background file, and the timeline from May 2nd, 2001. She starts connecting dots that should have been connected 22 years ago. The timeline. 7:30 am. Carl Jennings leaves for work. Mrs. Patterson sees him wave to someone, Leslie, through the window. 7:35 to 9:30 am. The murder window. This is when Eugene entered the house and killed Leslie. 9:30, 11:30 am. The cleanup attempt. Eugene stays in the house, trying to wash away evidence, moving Leslie's body, locking the dog in the basement. 11:47 am. Carl and Leslie's boss discover the scene. Here's what made detectives realize Eugene planned this. The cleaning supplies. Crime scene techs found traces of industrial-strength cleaning chemicals, the kind you don't buy at a grocery store, the kind used for serious biohazard cleanup. Eugene brought them with him. He knew he was going to kill her. He knew there would be blood. He came prepared. But why did the cleanup fail so spectacularly? The detective studies the crime scene photos again and sees it. Leslie fought harder than Eugene anticipated. The blood spatter extended further than he could manage. He probably thought he could control the scene, kill her quietly, clean up efficiently, and leave before anyone noticed. Instead, she fought him in the hallway. She scratched his face, his arms, his hands. She slammed against walls, leaving bloody handprints. She kicked, struggled, made the kind of mess that can't be erased in a few hours. Eugene panicked. He bashed her head against the baseboard 7 times. Violent, excessive, the action of someone who's lost control. Then, he strangled her to finish the job. After she was dead, he tried to salvage his plan. He dragged her upstairs to the shower, hoping water would wash away DNA. He scrubbed the hallway, the kitchen sink, the bathroom. He locked the dog in the basement so it wouldn't alert neighbors with barking. But there was too much blood, too much evidence, and he was running out of time. Why did Eugene kill Leslie? That's the question that haunts investigators. They developed 3 working theories. Theory 1, burglary gone wrong. Eugene had a history of petty theft. Maybe he knew the Jennings routine, knew Leslie would be home alone that morning, thought he could rob the house. Leslie recognized him, which meant he couldn't let her live, but this theory has problems. Nothing was stolen. Eugene brought cleaning supplies, suggesting premeditation, and burglars don't typically beat their victims to death. They run. Theory 2, sexual assault. Eugene attacked Leslie with sexual intent. She fought back. He killed her to silence her, but there's no evidence of sexual assault in the autopsy. No torn clothing. No biological evidence suggesting that kind of attack. Theory 3, elimination. Eugene wanted Leslie dead for a specific reason. Maybe she knew something about him. Maybe she'd witnessed something. Maybe she'd found out about his involvement in that earlier attack on the woman when he was 16, and he couldn't risk her telling anyone. This theory fits best with the evidence. Premeditation, excessive violence, the attempt to stage it as something else. But without a confession, they may never know the truth. The detective pulls up the September 2002 tip recording. An anonymous caller, their voice tight with nervousness. You need to look at Eugene Glee. He dated Lauren Jennings. He knew that house. He was there all the time. Someone knew. Someone suspected. They called it in 16 months after the murder, and if that tip had been properly followed up, Eugene would have been brought in for questioning. His DNA would have been collected. The case would have been solved in 2002. Instead, the tip got lost in the shuffle. Interview pending became interview forgotten. Carl Jennings would have lived to see his wife's killer arrested. 23 years of anguish could have been prevented, all because of one administrative failure, one missed follow-up, one name that slipped through the cracks. The detective closes the file and reaches for her phone. It's time to make the arrest. June 15th, 2024, early morning. Eugene Glee is leaving his apartment building in DC. briefcase in hand, heading to his car for the commute to work. He's 44 years old now, greying at the temples, wearing business casual and wireless headphones. He doesn't notice the unmarked vehicles parked along the street. Eugene Glee? He turns, confused, pulling out one earbud. Two detectives approach, badges out. I'm Detective Sarah Chen with the Chevy Chase Police Department. We need you to come with us. I'm sorry, what? Is this about a parking ticket? Because... No, sir. This is about Leslie Jennings. The colour drains from Eugene's face. For just a second, less than a heartbeat, something flashes in his eyes. Recognition, fear, calculation. Then his expression smooths into confusion. Leslie Jennings? That was... My girlfriend's mom died years ago. Why would you... We need to talk to you at the station. You can come voluntarily, or we can arrest you right now. Your choice. Eugene looks around as if the street might offer him an escape route. Am I being arrested? Not yet, but we have some questions about where you were on May 2nd, 2001. He gets in the car. Look at what Eugene Glee did. Look at how he killed a woman who welcomed him into her home, who fed him dinner, who treated him like family. Look at how he hugged Lauren at Carl's funeral, knowing he'd made her an orphan. Look at how he lived freely for 23 years while Leslie's family drowned in unanswered questions. If you can't stand people like this, if you believe that trust should mean something, that mothers should be safe in their own homes, that killers shouldn't get 2 decades of freedom, comment. I stand with Leslie Jennings right now. Let Eugene Glee know that his victims are not forgotten. Only people like Eugene, cowards who hide behind charm, manipulators who exploit trust, predators who count on silence, will scroll past this. Prove you're better. Comment below. Because what happens next in that interrogation room is going to show you exactly who Eugene really is, and it's going to make you sick. The interrogation room is sterile. Grey walls, fluorescent lights, a metal table bolted to the floor. Eugene sits across from Detectives Chen and Rodriguez, his hands clasped on the table, his expression carefully neutral. We need to ask you about your relationship with the Jennings family, Chen begins. I dated Lauren in high school, Eugene says. We broke up 20 years ago. I haven't really seen her since, maybe in passing a few times. When's the last time you were in their house? Eugene has to think. I mean, probably 2001, maybe late 2000, I don't remember exactly. Did you have a good relationship with Leslie? With Leslie? Yeah, she was nice. She always made me feel welcome. The detectives let the statement hang in the air for a moment. Eugene, where were you on the morning of May 2nd, 2001? May 2nd? That was, I don't know, 23 years ago. How would I remember that? That's the day Leslie Jennings was murdered. Eugene's face does something complicated. Shock, confusion, a flicker of what might be fear. I know. Lauren told me. It was horrible. Where were you that morning? I have no idea. At home, probably? I don't know. Chen leans forward. Eugene, we have a problem. We found DNA at the crime scene. Foreign DNA mixed with Leslie's blood. DNA under her fingernails from where she scratched her attacker. Eugene's jaw tightens. Okay. We compared that DNA to a sample we collected from you at the airport last week. Now Eugene's face goes absolutely white. What? You took my DNA without telling me. You discarded a water bottle. That's abandoned property. Perfectly legal. Rodriguez slides a document across the table. The forensics report highlighted in yellow where it says match confirmed. Your DNA was under Leslie Jennings' fingernails. Your DNA was mixed with her blood on the hallway wall. Your DNA was in that shower where we found her body. Eugene stares at the paper like it's written in a language he doesn't understand. That's impossible. No, Eugene. It's science. I've never given a DNA sample. Never. How would you even... We just told you how. Eugene's breathing picks up. His hands start to shake. I can't remember. I don't know what to say. You don't remember murdering Leslie Jennings? I didn't murder anyone. His voice cracks. I don't remember anything. You're trying to frame me. Chen's voice stays level, almost gentle. Eugene, we're not trying to frame you. We have your DNA at a murder scene. We just need you to explain how it got there. I don't know. He's starting to hyperventilate. I swear to God, I don't know. Were you at the house that morning? I don't remember. Did you attack Leslie? No, I mean, I can't. He puts his head in his hands and his shoulders start to shake. Eugene, are you crying? He looks up and his face is contorted in what's supposed to be anguish, but Chen notices immediately. No tears. His eyes are dry.
You're saying I'm guilty before I've even been put into a court of law?
There's no tears coming out of your face.
There's no tears coming out of your eyes, Eugene. I'm dehydrated. My eyes are dry. I don't. He dissolves into sobs again, still no actual tears. Do you want to call a lawyer? I don't know.
My eyes are bloodshot red because I'm just tired and drained. I don't know what's going on.
You're saying I'm guilty before I've even been to court. We're saying your DNA is at a murder scene. Help us understand how that happened. Eugene's crying intensifies. His voice rises to a near shriek. You're framing me. This is insane. I didn't do anything. My eyes are bloodshot because I'm tired and drained and I don't know what's going on. The detectives exchange glances. They've seen real breakdowns before. They've seen guilty people confess, innocent people panic, everything in between. This is performance. Bad performance. Eugene, listen to me. We have your DNA. We can place you at the scene. We know you knew the house, knew the family, knew Leslie would be alone that morning. We know you moved to DC 2 months after the murder and suddenly stopped getting arrested. We know about the anonymous tip from 2002 that named you as a suspect. Eugene's fake sobbing stops abruptly. What tip? Someone called us in September 2002 and told us to look at you. Do you know who that might have been? His face goes blank, calculating. No. Eugene, we're offering you a chance to explain. Because right now the evidence says you murdered Leslie Jennings. Your DNA is literally under her fingernails from where she fought you. Unless you have an explanation that makes sense, we're charging you with first-degree murder. Eugene's mouth opens and closes. He looks around the room like he's looking for an exit that doesn't exist. I want a lawyer, he finally whispers. Okay. Interview terminated. As the detectives leave the room, Chen turns to Rodriguez. He's guilty as hell. Oh, absolutely. That was the worst fake crying I've ever seen. You notice he never asked what happened to Leslie? Never asked how she died? Nothing. Just, I don't remember. And tears that don't exist. Rodriguez nods, because he knows exactly what happened. He was there. Eugene Glee is formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder. News of his arrest explodes across social media, through Chevy Chase neighborhood groups, in text message chains among Lauren's old friends. People who knew Eugene are stunned. Co-workers, neighbors, people who volunteered alongside him at community events. They all say the same thing. I never would have suspected him. He seemed so normal. But one ex-girlfriend comes forward with a different story. She dated Eugene for 6 months in 2015, and she tells police he was terrifying behind closed doors. He would rage during arguments, throw things at me, punch holes in walls. I was scared of him. I broke up with him and moved out while he was at work because I was afraid of what he'd do if I told him face to face. Eugene's brother says something similar. I was always afraid of him. There was something off, like he could snap at any moment. These statements paint a picture of a man with two faces. Charming and generous in public, violent and volatile in private. Lauren Jennings learns about the arrest through a phone call from Detective Chen. She sits down heavily, the room spinning. Eugene. You're saying Eugene killed my mom? We have conclusive DNA evidence. Lauren thinks back to all those times she saw him over the years. The funeral where he shook her hand. The grocery store encounters where they made small talk. Every single interaction he was lying to her face. Oh my God, she whispers. When I told him about Mom's death, he hugged me. He said he was sorry. I know. I'm so sorry, Lauren. After she hangs up, Lauren sits in silence, processing a revelation that rewrites her entire understanding of her mother's murder. The killer wasn't some stranger. It was someone she loved, someone she defended, someone who looked her in the eye and lied for 23 years. Eugene Glee's trial is scheduled for May 2025. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and for nearly a year, Eugene sits in jail awaiting trial. His lawyers file motions, request delays, argue for bail, all denied. The prosecution builds their case methodically. The DNA evidence, irrefutable. Eugene's history with the family establishes access and knowledge. His criminal record establishes propensity for violence and poor judgment. The 2002 anonymous tip establishes early suspicion. His sudden move to DC after the murder establishes flight pattern. Witness statements about his violent temper establishes capacity for violence. But there's a problem, no clear motive. Without Eugene's confession, prosecutors can't definitively say why he killed Leslie. Burglary, sexual assault, some personal grudge? They have theories, but no proof. The defense team sees an opening. Without motive, they can argue this was a crime of passion, not premeditation. They can push for a lesser charge, a shorter sentence. In May 2025, the prosecution makes an offer. Plead guilty to second-degree murder, receive a maximum of 30 years instead of life without parole for first degree. It's a strategic calculation. A second-degree murder implies the killing wasn't planned, that it happened in the heat of the moment. The prosecution knows this isn't true. The cleaning supplies prove premeditation, but getting a guaranteed conviction is worth more than risking a trial where a sympathetic jury might nullify based on reasonable doubt about motive. Eugene's lawyers present the offer. If he takes it, he admits guilt but avoids the possibility of dying in prison. If he rejects it and goes to trial, he risks life without parole if convicted. Eugene accepts the deal. On May 15th, 2025, almost exactly 24 years after he murdered Leslie Jennings, Eugene Glee stands before a judge and speaks words he's managed to avoid for more than 2 decades. Guilty. I plead guilty to second-degree murder in the death of Leslie Jennings. The courtroom erupts. Lauren Jennings sits in the front row, tears streaming down her face, holding onto the armrest so hard her knuckles turn white. The judge asks Eugene directly, Mr. Glee, do you understand that by entering this plea you are admitting that you killed Leslie Jennings on May 2nd, 2001? Yes, Your Honor. And you are doing this of your own free will, understanding the consequences? Yes. But here's the thing about plea deals. They don't require explanations. Eugene doesn't have to describe what happened that morning. He doesn't have to explain why he killed her. He doesn't have to give Lauren or anyone else the closure that comes with understanding. He just has to say guilty and accept his sentence. The judge sets a sentencing hearing for August 2025. During the months between plea and sentencing, journalists try to interview Eugene. Family members beg him for answers. Prosecutors offer to reduce his sentence in exchange for a full confession. Eugene says nothing. He meets with his lawyers regularly, and they report that he maintains he doesn't remember the details, that it's all a blur, that something happened that morning, but he's blocked it out. Detective Chen doesn't buy it for a second. He remembers every detail, she tells Rodriguez. He's just not telling. Why wouldn't he? He's already pleaded guilty. Because the truth makes him look worse than the unknown does. People can imagine a crime of passion, a moment of panic. Whatever really happened that morning, it's uglier than that. August 2025, the sentencing hearing. The courtroom is packed, media, community members, true crime followers who've been following the case online. Leslie Jennings sits front and center, flanked by family members and supporters. Eugene is brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He's lost weight since the arrest, his face gaunt, hair greying rapidly. The prosecutor stands and addresses the judge. Your Honor, the state recommends the maximum sentence of 30 years for the brutal murder of Leslie Jennings, a crime that went unsolved for 23 years, causing immeasurable pain to her family and community. Then it's the defense's turn. Eugene's lawyer argues for leniency, citing his clean record in the 23 years after the murder, his community involvement, his charitable work. My client made a terrible mistake at 21 years old. He has lived a law-abiding life since then, proving that people can change. The judge listens to both sides, then turns to Eugene. Mr. Glee, do you wish to make a statement? Eugene stands. Everyone leans forward, hoping, finally, for some explanation. I'm sorry, he says quietly. I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. That's it. No details, no explanation, no real accountability. The judge's face hardens. Mr. Glee, you took a woman's life in her own home. You prevented her from seeing her daughter grow up, from meeting her grandchildren, from living the decades she had ahead of her. You then hid your crime for 23 years while her family suffered. You showed no remorse, no conscience, no humanity. She pauses, letting the words settle. I hereby sentence you to 22 years in the Maryland Department of Corrections. You will be eligible for parole after serving 85% of your sentence. Eugene shows no reaction. He's escorted out of the courtroom, and just like that, it's over. Leslie Jennings stands, and for the first time in 24 years, she feels something close to peace. Outside the courthouse, she speaks to waiting reporters. I still don't know why Eugene killed my mother. Maybe I never will, but at least now I know who did it. At least now he's paying for what he took from us. Eugene Glee enters the Maryland Department of Corrections on September 3rd, 2025. He's 44 years old. If he serves his full sentence with good behavior, he'll be 66 when he's released. The case that haunted Chevy Chase for 23 years is finally closed. But closure doesn't erase the damage. Leslie Jennings spends months in therapy, processing the revelation that someone she once loved, someone she defended, someone she trusted, murdered her mother. The betrayal runs deeper than the crime itself in some ways. I told police he was harmless when that woman accused him of attacking her, she tells her therapist. I vouched for him. What if I was wrong then too? What if he hurt her and I helped him get away with it? Her therapist is gentle but firm. You were 16 years old. You believed the best about someone you loved. That's not your fault. Eugene is responsible for his actions. No one else. But guilt is stubborn. It doesn't respond to logic. The Chevy Chase community struggles to reconcile the Eugene they thought they knew with the monster who killed Leslie. Parents who let their teenagers hang out with him feel sick. Neighbors who waved at him on the street. Who made small talk at the grocery store. Who donated to the same charities. They all wonder how they missed the signs. Were there signs? One neighbor asks a reporter. Or was he just that good at hiding? The truth is probably both. People with antisocial tendencies often excel at performing normalcy. They learn to mimic empathy, to say the right things, to present the face society expects. Eugene Glee spent 23 years perfecting that performance. But underneath, the same person who beat Leslie Jennings to death in her own hallway and then calmly scrubbed blood off walls for 2 hours. The Chevy Chase Police Department faces intense criticism for their handling of the original investigation. How did Eugene's name sit in a case file for 22 years without anyone following up? How did an anonymous tip naming him as a suspect get ignored? The police chief holds a press conference. We acknowledge that mistakes were made in 2002. Protocols that should have been followed weren't. That's on us. We've since implemented new cold case procedures to ensure this doesn't happen again. It's a necessary statement, but it rings hollow for the people who waited 23 years for justice. Carl Jennings never got to see his wife's killer arrested. That fact haunts everyone involved in the case. If the 2002 tip had been properly investigated, Carl would have lived to see Eugene in handcuffs. He would have died knowing the truth instead of dying with questions. I think about Mr. Jennings every day, Detective Chen says in an interview. I think about how we failed him, how the system failed him. That's something I have to carry. Eugene's family faces their own reckoning. His mother moves out of DC, cutting off contact with journalists and former neighbors. Eugene's brother gives one interview saying, "I always knew there was something wrong with him. I wasn't surprised when I heard about the arrest. Devastated, but not surprised." Even Eugene's ex-girlfriends struggle with the revelation. One of them writes an op-ed titled "I dated a murderer and never knew," describing the cognitive dissonance of reconciling the man she knew with the man who killed Leslie Jennings decades before they met. "He could be sweet," she writes. "He could be thoughtful. He donated to animal shelters and volunteered at food banks. But he also had a temper. He also scared me. And now I know that the violence I saw in private moments, that wasn't the worst he was capable of. Not even close." The case also raises uncomfortable questions about how we assess danger. Eugene had arrests for theft, weapons possession, drunk driving, crimes that didn't require DNA collection but should have raised red flags. After Leslie's murder, he stopped getting arrested entirely, convincing everyone he'd turned his life around. What if he didn't change? One forensic psychologist asks in a podcast about the case. What if he just got better at not getting caught? What if the only reason he seemed reformed is because he already committed his worst crime? It's a chilling thought and one that doesn't have a clear answer. The genetic genealogy technique that finally solved Leslie's case has since been used to crack hundreds of cold cases across the country. The Golden State Killer, the April Tinsley case. Dozens of Jane and John Does finally identified and returned to their families. But it's not without controversy. Privacy advocates worry about the implications of law enforcement accessing commercial DNA databases. What happens when your distant cousin's genetic profile gets you investigated for a crime you didn't commit? What safeguards exist to prevent abuse? For now, most states allow genetic genealogy in law enforcement investigations, arguing that solving violent crimes and identifying victims outweighs privacy concerns. But the debate continues and legislation is evolving. Leslie Jennings' case became the first in Maryland to be solved through genetic genealogy. It's now taught in forensic science classes as a case study in how new technology can breathe life into seemingly impossible cold cases. But for all the technical achievement, the human cost remains staggering. A mother murdered in her own home, a husband who died never knowing who killed his wife, a daughter who defended her mother's murderer, a community that lost its sense of safety, 23 years of grief, questions, and injustice. And Eugene Glee, the man at the center of it all, still won't say why he did it. Even with Eugene behind bars, fundamental questions remain unanswered. Why did he kill Leslie? Investigators have theories. The burglary theory. Eugene knew the Jennings home, knew their routine, knew when Leslie would be alone. Maybe he planned to steal valuables to fuel his other criminal habits. Leslie surprised him, recognized him, and he killed her to avoid identification. But nothing was stolen. The house wasn't ransacked. There's no evidence Eugene even looked for valuables. The elimination theory. Maybe Leslie knew something about Eugene that threatened him. Maybe she'd figured out he was the one who attacked that woman when he was 16. Maybe she'd witnessed him committing another crime and was about to tell someone. But there's no evidence Leslie suspected Eugene of anything. All accounts suggest she liked him, trusted him, welcomed him into their home. The rage theory. Maybe Eugene showed up that morning with some grievance, real or imagined, against Leslie. Maybe she said something that triggered him. Maybe years of hidden resentment boiled over in a moment of violence. But if so, what was the grievance? What could possibly justify bringing cleaning supplies to commit murder? The truth is, without Eugene's confession, we may never know. And that uncertainty is its own kind of torture for Leslie's family. Was Leslie his only victim? Eugene was never charged with attacking that woman when he was 16. He was never definitively linked to any other violent crimes. But investigators wonder, does someone capable of Leslie's murder stop at one? For 23 years after killing Leslie, Eugene lived freely in Washington, D.C. During that time, did he harm anyone else? Are there other cold cases waiting to be connected to him? Police have reviewed unsolved assaults and homicides in the DC area from 2001-2024, looking for patterns that might match Eugene's MO. So far, nothing. But absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Who made the anonymous tip in 2002? Someone called police 16 months after the murder and named Eugene as a suspect. That person knew something, suspected something, but they never called back. They never followed up. They've never come forward publicly. Who were they? What made them suspicious of Eugene? And how did they feel when 22 years later they learned their tip was ignored? Detective Chen has tried to trace the call, but the recording is too degraded to identify the voice, and the number came from a prepaid cell phone that's long since been disconnected. I think about that caller sometimes, Chen says. They did the right thing. They told us to look at Eugene, and we just didn't. I wonder if they blame themselves. I hope they know this wasn't their fault. Could this have been prevented? If detectives had followed up on the 2002 tip, Eugene would have been interviewed. His DNA would have been collected. The match would have been made immediately, and he would have been arrested 22 years earlier. Carl Jennings would have lived to see justice. Lauren would have gotten answers while her father was still alive. The community would have had closure instead of festering fear. But the tip fell through the cracks, and Eugene walked free for 2 more decades. This case is a lesson in the importance of following every lead, the police chief says. Even tips that seem unlikely. Even suspects who seem improbable. Because sometimes the most ordinary seeming person is the one who did it. It's a hard lesson learned too late. Eugene Glee wanted to be forgotten. He wanted his crime erased from memory. He wanted Leslie Jennings to become just another statistic, another cold case that faded into irrelevance. He counted on people moving on. He counted on attention spans being short. He counted on his 23 years of freedom proving he'd gotten away with it. If you believe Leslie Jennings mattered, if you believe we must remember so this never happens again, smash that like button and subscribe right now. People like Eugene depend on our silence, our short attention spans, our apathy. They count on us watching stories like this, feeling sad for a moment and then forgetting by tomorrow. Prove him wrong. Like this video, if you believe every life matters, if you believe justice isn't optional, if you believe we protect the innocent by remembering the guilty, only those who side with monsters will refuse. Only people who think killers deserve anonymity, who think victims should be forgotten, who think 23 years of freedom is acceptable, only they will scroll past without engaging. Subscribe, like, comment, show that we don't forget, show that Leslie Jennings' life mattered, show that Eugene Glee's 23 years of freedom was a failure, not a victory. Do it now. On October 5th, 2025, what would have been Leslie's 73rd birthday, Lauren Jennings stands at her mother's grave with fresh flowers. I finally know, she says quietly to the headstone. I finally know who did it. I wish Dad were here to know too. The cemetery is quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the violence that brought Leslie here 24 years earlier. Lauren traces her fingers over the engraved letters. Leslie Ann Jennings, beloved mother, wife, friend. I defended him, Mum. When that woman said he attacked her, I went to the police and told them Eugene was harmless. I really believed it. I'm so sorry. But Lauren knows, intellectually at least, that she's not to blame. She was a teenager in love, unable to see the darkness hiding behind Eugene's charm. She couldn't have known. None of them could have known. That's the insidious nature of people like Eugene Glee. They blend in. They smile at the right times, say the right things, perform empathy so convincingly that even the people who love them miss the warning signs, until it's too late. Leslie Jennings' case changed Maryland law. In 2025, the state legislature passed the Leslie Jennings Cold Case DNA Act, mandating that all cold case evidence be regularly reviewed and that genetic genealogy be utilized for unsolved violent crimes. It also requires that anonymous tips be logged in a centralized database with automatic follow-up protocols. It won't bring Leslie back. It won't erase 23 years of grief, but it might prevent the next Eugene Glee from walking free for decades. The case also prompted Chevy Chase to re-examine its relationship with safety. For years, the community prided itself on being a place where nothing bad happens, where doors can stay unlocked, where trust is freely given. Leslie's murder shattered that illusion, and maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. We learned that danger doesn't always look dangerous, one community member says at a town hall meeting. We learned that you can't tell who's safe just by looking at them. And we learned that vigilance isn't paranoia, it's survival. The 47 snow globes Leslie collected still sit on a shelf in Lauren's home. She couldn't bring herself to pack them away. Each one represents a trip, a memory, a moment when her family was intact and happy. Sometimes Lauren picks one up, the one from Yellowstone or the one from Cape Cod, and shakes it, watching the fake snow swirl around tiny landmarks frozen in resin. For a moment, her mother feels close. Then reality settles, like the snow returning to the bottom of the globe. Her mother is dead, murdered by someone who sat at their dinner table, who slept in their guest room, who was welcomed like family. The betrayal never fully fades, but neither does the love. Eugene Glee is inmate 4492847 in the Maryland Correctional System. He works in the prison library, keeps to himself, and has filed no appeals. In 2043, when he's 62, he'll be eligible for parole. Will he get it? That depends on whether he ever tells the truth about what happened that morning in May 2001. Parole boards want to see remorse. They want to see understanding of the harm caused. They want to see a prisoner who's reflected on their crime and emerged transformed. Eugene has shown none of that. He said, "I'm sorry" in court, but he's never explained why he killed Leslie. He's never given Lauren the closure she deserves. Without that, parole seems unlikely. But if he does get out, if he walks free in his 60s, having served his sentence, what then? Does he reintegrate into society? Does he change his name and disappear? Does he finally tell the truth? Or does he maintain his silence until he dies, taking the full story of Leslie Jennings' murder to his grave? Time will tell. For now, Leslie's case stands as both a triumph and a tragedy. A triumph of modern forensic science, proof that no crime is truly unsolvable if investigators never give up. But a tragedy of missed opportunities, ignored tips, and systemic failures that let a killer hide in plain sight for 23 years. I think about what my mother would want people to remember, Lauren says. Not how she died, but how she lived. She collected snow globes. She left post-it notes with encouraging messages. She never missed work unless she called. She was reliable, kind, creative. She pauses, wiping her eyes. She deserved to grow old. She deserved to meet her grandchildren. She deserved to retire and travel and fill her house with more snow globes. Eugene Glee took all of that from her. But he didn't take her memory. And he didn't take the love we carry for her. That's still ours. He can't touch that. It's a small comfort, but it's something. The case of Carina Holmer, a young Swedish woman who was murdered in Boston in 1996, involves a crime scene so disturbing that investigators initially thought they were dealing with a serial killer. Only half of her body was ever found. The other half, still missing, nearly 30 years later. That investigation is still active, and what the evidence suggests is even more chilling than Leslie's case. Click that video before you lose it in your feed. You need to see what happened. Leslie Ann Jennings, born October 5th, 1952, died May 2nd, 2001 at age 48. She collected 47 snow globes, loved detective novels, and always left encouraging post-it notes for the people she loved.